So a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a lone wolf, I'm CEO, I have to go alone, I have to make the decisions. But there are CEOs out there that do billions and billions of dollars of revenue every day. And even if you can find one that maybe even does 100,000 in a year, find that entrepreneur, figure out how he did that, and then build your network from there. And so it's little things like that you can never get until you're in it. And that's what makes entrepreneurship so great. You can teach it all you want, but until you've had an exit, everything is just theory.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new podcast series, Decoding the Digital Industrial Revolution. Buckle up because we're about to crack the code on the incredible transformation happening right now in manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, and everything in between. Imagine factories that operate with utmost efficiency, self-driving delivery trucks, and logistics networks that anticipate your needs. That's the future we're hurtling towards. And on this show, we'll be talking to the industry leaders who are making it happen. I'm your host, Arvind Sarin, and today we have a guest who's a true digital trailblazer. Let's give a warm welcome to Andrew Collier, co-founder and chief revenue officer at Kitchenery. Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Arvind. Really appreciate it.
Well, wonderful. I am so excited to have this opening podcast with you for this wonderful topic that's just so interesting to so many of our viewers. But let me begin with, so you obviously wear multiple hats as co-founder and chief revenue officer. There must be so much on your plate for being a part of a fast-growing and a young startup. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what drew you to this fascinating area of digital transformation? And then also, what kind of innovative solutions Kitchenery is bringing to the table?
Absolutely. So I come from an IoT background, but more in the industrial space. So a lot of boiler rooms, not really sexy, but the family business does okay. But I was always drawn to something more consumer. So, I worked in the IoT world for a long time as a salesperson. And so as chief revenue officer, I like to say my job is head cheerleader. I always have to, give the team good news and let them know what's on the horizon and who we're selling to next. And, what investors are we talking to and so forth. So I really look at it as, the person who gets up every day and makes sure that everyone else is doing okay. You really gotta check on the team, make sure everyone's motivated, everyone's happy, everyone's working towards a goal that they believe in. Because if you don't have that, you don't have a company. So, what really drew me to this technology in particular, I think you will agree with me that the kitchen is the heart of everyone's home. And so it seemed like an area ripe for innovation. Wireless power technology has been around for probably close to 2 decades now, so it's not new in that sense, but what we're doing is new in the sense that we're applying it to cordless appliances, hybrid induction cooktops, and then it's also about 100 times more powerful than your traditional smartphone charger.
Fantastic. Okay, well, great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I know that a lot of times doing the consumer startup is a lot harder than, a B2B. So looks like you like challenging yourself and taking on some challenging initiatives. And this is fantastic. And you shared with us why you chose this area. Of course, kitchen truly is the heart of any home. And I think this is super interesting. So tell me a bit more about what is Kitchenery, maybe in a little bit more detail so our viewers can understand what the company does and what is this product?
Absolutely. So let me tell you the story on how it was started. So my co-founder and CEO, Akshay Buva, he's a materials and mechanical engineer by profession. And so, this company was born out of frustration. He was working at home during COVID and he had cluttered and chaotic countertops that had cords everywhere. And he got frustrated. As a typical engineer, he likes things in order. He likes things in their place. And so he thought to himself, living in a small one-room apartment, if everything else is going wireless, why not this? And so that's when he really started doing some feasibility testing around the possibility of sending, large amounts of power wirelessly in the air and doing it safely and efficiently to have a real product market fit. And so The company was born in its first year in 2020, and then went through the Generator program up there, which is a startup accelerator. Then Akshay had a big turning point where he got into the Techstars program. So that's an elite incubator that partnered with Stanley Black & Decker, and they became our first venture backers. And that was in 2022. Then in 2023, Akshay got into the Spartan Incubator at the University of Tampa. We're headquartered in Tampa, so it's a place near and dear to our hearts. But that's actually when I met him. He was getting his master's in entrepreneurship there. I was working at my previous company, and, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I came from a family of entrepreneurs, and when I met him at a tech networking event, it just seems like the perfect fit. I was a salesman, he was an engineer. We sort of need each other in a lot of ways, and we complement each other in a lot of ways. But from there, the team has grown significantly, and we've had a lot of help from a really good board of advisors and mentors along the way. But, our sweet spot is what we call short range, high power applications. So that's everything on the device spectrum from about 50 watts to about 2000. So that's covering about 90% of the small device spectrum. So we're focused on cordless appliances initially. But if you really think about the vision, it expands to phones, laptops, medical devices, power tools. I mean, even drones. There's a lot to be said about the electrification of devices in general.
Wow, what a bold vision, and that's fantastic. And thank you for sharing your journey. I know it can be very daunting, but at the same time, hearing from these success stories is truly inspiring. And I hope that this inspires a lot of other future entrepreneurs, younger people, to take this journey that is challenging, but is super rewarding as well. So thank you for sharing your personal story there and how you got into it. Now, I think, you would agree that any successful startup or even a digital transformation initiative hinges on collaboration across teams. How can companies foster a culture that encourages this type of teamwork in your view?
So you have to have very strategic goals that very clearly outline the metrics for the vision. People respond to incentives. That's the basic of free market economics. And so when you have people working towards something that they know is going to contribute to a larger goal and they need other people for, it keeps them aligned pretty well. And we see that on a very basic level on the day-to-day doing business, at convenience stores, grocery stores, etc. But, on a more sophisticated level, when you're selling B2B or when you're selling larger enterprise deals, you really have to bring a lot of people's opinions in play. It's often a buying committee decision, not a one-person decision. And I can tell you from my experience, we're not only looking to sell our quantum energy pad, is what we call it, and our cordless appliances directly into consumers' homes, but also where consumers spend their free time, in their RVs, in their boats, maybe in their second home, in the beach or what have you. But also we see applications in the commercial industry because of the energy play, and then a senior living facility. People with Parkinson's can't plug stuff in. People with dementia forget to shut off a device, and so we auto shut it off. But I would say at the core, the value of what we're bringing is a fundamental change in the consumer behavior. Because when you're a kid, right, you're taught this stove's hot, don't touch it. Well, with induction, that's not the case. So you have to get people used to that and saying this cooktop's okay, this one's not. But we have a belief that this is possible because of Apple. Everyone told them they were crazy when they tried to remove the headphone jack, and now AirPods are a $14 billion brand.
Absolutely.
So when you bring bigger channel partners like that in play, it just requires more people. And when people are aligned towards the same vision, it's easy to keep them on the same page. It's when communication doesn't happen when you fail.
Yeah, no, I think it's there's a lot to unpack there. I think some very interesting points that you made. So collaboration, of course, can be when you have a common goal and everyone's working towards that common goal. And if that goal is not just pointing inwards, but it's more for making lives better across the globe, and has something to do with sustainability, something that's bigger than just increasing revenue for you. I think
Absolutely.
it
So
attracts talent as well.
yeah, definitely. So one of our core tenets at Kitchenery is the concept of social entrepreneurship. So giving back to the community to invest in it so that those people are more prosperous and so they have time, energy, money to spend on are what really are luxury goods right now, but will become, I think more and more commonplace and necessity in the future as people get away from the idea of plugging things in instead of, using the pad. But it's a full cycle, right? So the concept at its core is that the businesses give back to the nonprofits that benefit the community so that they're more empowered and they get skill training so that they can invest, do more for the businesses so they make more money, and then the cycle continues. So impact is everything, and the kitchen is one of the places that I think makes the largest impact on our day-to-day life because of the necessity of food, obviously, but because it's where we share our lives, it's where we share our stories, it's where we socialize, it's where we really spend the majority of our waking hours in a lot of senses.
True, true. And I think it's interesting the way you describe it. It's about changing behavior, and I think that is also another common theme that I've noticed in a lot of these successful products. It's about changing behavior of that user, and if you could do that, then of course you really become a part of their routine where they just really love the product, they're using it, and then of course
Absolutely.
they become true champions who talk about the product and refer the product to other people, and that can be super beneficial. So good. Well, that's super interesting. So is your model direct to consumer, or is it also like bringing IoT and then that AIoTs to different industries or different businesses as well? Can you describe a little bit of
Absolutely.
yeah, the
Absolutely.
AI in this technology and what your model is?
Absolutely. So we do have a direct-to-consumer portal. You can reserve your set of the first 5 appliances a day at kitchenery.us. So a little shameless plug there, but our model is also B2B. So we're targeting areas that typically drive innovation. So if you think about the Tesla model, right? They came out with the Roadster first, used that money to make the S and then make the 3. And so where do people with disposable income spend their time? On their boats and their RVs and their second homes, maybe on a plane. And so the value proposition is get it in the places where people have the need for maximum storability, energy efficiency, mobility. And then as they get used to that behavior, they're going to think, oh, well, now I want it here. And so that's what drives the mass market adoption. It is really how we think about it. But the larger business model at play, which I think is going to be our most valuable, is truly the software and the data. So without getting too technical, our core software is around smart frequency modulation, which allows us to deliver that exact amount of power in real time and do it seamlessly, and the proprietary protocol between the device and the pad. And so we have a smart MCU built inside both the pad and the device. And so that allows us to collect all the device analytics and necessary consumer analytics to be able to analyze that with AI and ML engines, and then be able to package that data appropriately for valuable business outcomes.
Wow, no, that's interesting. And you talked about the Tesla model. I'm obviously also super fascinated by the Tesla model, and I see how that applies to a lot of these products. Because first, when you don't have the cost so down to be able to democratize the product, then you find that niche, people who want to use your product the most, who need it the most, and who would pay the high dollar. And that's why the initial Roadster was probably 200,000 plus, and then the Model S came, 100,000 plus, and then now, you have obviously, the prices that are a lot more economical. The Model 3, 30 some thousand, even the Model Y,
Right.
is an interesting, concept there. And I think so. What you're describing is that you're trying to do something similar, where you're trying to find where the users wanted the most, and they have the maximum benefit, and even that affordability, factor is not a huge concern, because then by buying your product, they're helping the product become available to masses, just
Right.
like Tesla is now. So that's really interesting, the way you describe it. And then of course, the role of data. Of course, data is king. So
Sure.
you're saying that the way that you have these devices connected, and the energy efficiency that happens, and the protocols that you've designed, you're able to capture a lot of that data, and you're able to then, based on that data, I guess, do additional things. Now, I guess, what advice would you offer to others, in businesses? Like, how can businesses leverage data insights to optimize their processes? And specifically, I guess, for this conversation, more in supply chain and logistics and manufacturing and transportation, how can data be leveraged the right way?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, come from a industrial steam heating background. So the combinatorics and logic I'm used to is around proactive maintenance and industrial control. So in the consumer world, it's a bit different. So you can use it on the device side for things like which features are people using, how to optimize the feature set on the hardware side so that people get the max usage of the features they love versus the features they hardly use. And then you can talk about the user themselves. So how often are they using it? What time of the day? What ingredients are they using? Things of that nature. And so it comes down to, depending on what your business needs, the data we collect and analyze is curated towards that. So, for example, in the RV industry that I mentioned, they're also going electric. And so to be able to monitor the output of every appliance is critical when they're running on all electric, especially out in the wilderness. And so to be able to optimize the performance of appliances to be hyper energy efficient, or even, shut off in certain circumstances, is critical to survival, maybe in that circumstance.
Yeah, it reduces waste, of course, and that optimization can be extremely, extremely important. And I think there are so many different ways where we're going to be seeing the impact of AI, in all different technologies, but specifically here in IoT as well, and in logistics and manufacturing and in transportation. I mean, for the B2C space, there is that aspect of customer support, that can leverage a lot of the AI. Of course, understanding user behavior, so you're able to then, change that behavior is important as well, as we talked about earlier. I think there are so many other ways in which, data can be important. And along with that, that data can feed into AI. And, there can be different models that could, then have the predictive capability as well. I mean, you could, as being responsible for sales, you could have those models that help you in finding the right ideal customers. What are those traits, and then be able to target them more effectively. And then, of course, have that predictive nature of various campaigns that can be run, or it just can be in so many ways so beneficial, overall. So talking about, important data, talking about optimizing, getting data insights, I think what comes to mind is, of course, security. So, a lot of times we hear these stories that, the Trojan or the virus came from an IoT device that wasn't maybe as well connected through the VPN, not just in the home automation space, but in other businesses as well. So,
Absolutely.
cybersecurity is paramount in today's connected world. And what do you figure? How can companies approach cybersecurity challenge when adopting these new digital technologies?
Yeah. So the first thing is obviously your compliance standards, your ISOs, your SOCs, those are big. You partner with random pen testing firms, or you have a professional security team that you know and trust. There is something, there's the old lore in cybersecurity that there's no such thing as a secure platform, and you do have risks, but minimizing those at every single entry point and to device by device is very key. Luckily for me, I know a lot of the professional and biggest players in the platform realm, and we're planning on leveraging them for the majority of our infrastructure. And so when it comes down to locking things down, I think best practices are first and foremost lock yourself down, in the sense that social engineering and human faux pas is often the largest cause of a failure, and it's more often human error than not, giving away some credentials or whatever the mistake may be. And so I think maybe AI could even help us predict some of the human failure points in an IoT system.
Totally, totally. And I think AI plays a huge role in cybersecurity as well. Of course, securing these devices is important, and overall for other businesses too. Generally, it is a good practice to stay up to date on what are the latest and greatest things that can be done to make your platform secure. So, can you discuss next how digital transformation and innovation can contribute to a more sort of sustainable future by adopting sustainable practices within industries, across the board, like manufacturing, supply chain management? How can, digital transformation and innovation give us that, sustainability, or help us in our sustainability agenda?
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is you have to think about it from a cradle to cradle perspective. So from the birth of the device or gadget, and what's happening after the user is done with it. And so to optimize every single component in that and the processes and places that they're happening in is a daunting task, to say the least. But there are a lot of initiatives and resources and websites that, give some type of information to a company standing on this issue and their related practices. So you try to do as much investigative work as you can by using, your own network and resources. But the value, I think, for us as a company is, we're reducing plastic in general. So no rubber wires. We're focused on using only recyclable plastics and metals. And so it is something that you have to think about, but it is something that at some point you need to find a done point, as we say in engineering. Like at some point the product has to launch. And so you try to put it as a primary tenet in your product design from the beginning. And usually people find ways to make it even better. I think a misconception is that eco-friendly is more expensive, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I think Tesla is even proven that. I'm not here to argue about if EVs are the most eco-friendly compared to internal combustion. What I am here to say is that there's an attempt being made, and there is a now cost comparison out there. And so I think if you take that perspective, the free market, again, solves a lot of problems on that front, especially if there's support from the consumers. Ultimately, they're the ones who decide, what they want, what they're going to do with the waste, and, what they buy. And so if you're pleasing them and you're pleasing the environment, so to speak, at the same time, I think that ultimately makes them even more happy. And so it's a win-win for everybody if you do it right and you're creative enough to think about alternative solutions that just might not be the first supplier that comes to your inbox.
Totally. It's about empowering the users and having sustainability as an important pillar in your overall strategy. And, I think in this particular example as well, I know that sustainability, I like the framework that you give about cradle to cradle, just as a thought process for any type of equipment that you're designing. Think about how it is produced, but then also how eventually it's going to retire and where it goes. And I think there is a lot of effort in reducing that waste, of course, which is through refurbishing some of these equipments. I'm seeing a lot of
Absolutely.
that in manufacturing, that various parts can be properly refurbished and can be put to use. So I think having that as a strategy definitely helps. And then also, I'm seeing some, specific to the kitchen as well. There are some really cool devices and intelligent appliances that are not only reducing and optimizing power, like including yours, but there is one that takes the leftovers and converts that into manure. I found that really interesting during my research. That it's like it's got so many different prongs to the overall sustainability consideration, but then having that desire and doing effort and keeping that as an important pillar in your overall strategy is definitely something that the leaders and entrepreneurs must keep in mind.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say sustainability doesn't end at eco-friendly, sustainable for your business. Like, how well do you know your supply chain partners? How resilient are they for you? Every business falls on tough times and everybody needs, a good friend in a negotiation. And so, we attempt to keep as much of our operations as local as possible. It's a little easier for us than most companies considering, we're a young company, but we take the sort of approach that we want to have as many things co-located as possible, because the interactions and the outcomes from that usually surprise us and surprise the people that work with us and for us.
Interesting. Okay. Got it. Yeah. For me as well, I think, sustainability back when I was getting my MBA from UT Austin, that's when I came across this book from, not very popular, but it's from Christoph Luneberger, who had interviewed the top CEOs, top executives, and then he came up with, these different strategies to assess how you could have the smartest people, come work for your goals under your vision, and how to make that happen, and how a lot of these successful leaders have done that. And that's when I really truly understood, how sustainability was an important aspect, across the board for every single successful leader. I mean, and that's what I'm seeing in these, especially larger enterprises as well. Having a sustainability statement, sustainability agenda is just so important. And it's not very intuitive to everyone, and especially for startup, you may be just wanting to find your product market fit and get your next round of funding, but it's just so important to keep sustainability in your strategy, that it as we discussed earlier, it helps you attract the talent, because then people want to work on something that's bigger than themselves, and it just is making the world around us better. And I think sustainability can bring a lot of those things to surface, so that you become an organization that both the consumers, the employees, are really feeling good of being associated with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. So what are some roadblocks for companies when they try to innovate and adopt these emerging technologies, or do the so-called, digital transformation, embark on that journey? What are some of those roadblocks, and what are you seeing as some exciting opportunities, I guess, to, overcome them on the horizon too?
So, roadblocks specific to companies, the first thing I'll always say is find a paying customer. Once you do that, a lot of things become a lot easier. The old adage that sales cures everything. As long as you have money in the door, you can figure everything else out. Number two, finding people who are really believers and backers of your dream, because I always think about it this way: every person has at least 100 people behind them, like in their network, in their contact book. And you never know who someone knows. Maybe that's a partner in this, supply chain. Maybe that's a partner that's an investor. Maybe that's a partner that's a customer. Maybe that's whatever the case is. And so, you have a lot of opportunities to make things happen if you continually believe in your mission and your vision, and really just work at it as much as you possibly can is the short answer. But the opportunities, I would say, rely on your ability to aggregate the best talent. It's not so much, I'm not an engineer, but I am pretty technical, and so I rely on people more technical to me that to do that work. And then I'm, pretty good sales guy, but I'm not great at making graphics for marketing, so I rely on someone for that. So you need to find your aggregators in the investor world. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of startups, because they just want to go after the first check that comes their way. And there's an old phrase also, not all money is good money. You need to find an investor that brings something else to the table for you. So maybe for us, for example, we have an investor who runs our AI platform. We have an investor that does our go-to-market strategy and PR. We have an investor that does a lot of our investor relations activities, like CFO related, like due diligence and deal room and everything that other investors are going to want to see. So he's communicating to
Wow.
other investors on our behalf. And so
Very actively involved, investment group that you have. That's very interesting.
Absolutely. And it's because, and they're comped for that because it's advisory. And so it's not of their goodwill. It's in their interest, because they're securing their investment by bringing people in their network who are probably, if they're an investor, they're probably also customers in the future. And they probably are, in the target industries that I'm talking about. So the roadblocks are opportunities if you have the right technology about you. So for outreach, for example, what's your investment strategy? So, everyone knows the basics: crowdfunding, friends and family. But then when you get to, that pre-seed, seed, series A, and you have to start doing angel groups and VCs, your pitch has to become much more crisp and clear. Your messaging has to be perfect. Your brand identity and all associated media has to be, recognized and affiliated, because these people see 150 pitches a day or 150 decks a day, and maybe take 3 pitches. So it's a very competitive world, but if you do it right, you do it long enough, and you really build relationships with the people who have been there, done that. One of my mentors always tells me there's no problem that you're going to go through that someone else hasn't been through before.
True.
So a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a lone wolf, I'm CEO, I have to go alone, I have to make the decisions. But there are CEOs out there that do billions and billions of dollars of revenue every day. And even if you can find one that maybe even does 100,000 in a year, find that entrepreneur, figure out how he did that, and then build your network from there. And so I encourage, this is maybe a low-tech innovation, but I think people like it. I always introduce myself when I go to networking events, first and last name, because how many Andrews do you meet? A lot.
Too many. Yeah.
Too many, exactly. But you're going to remember Andrew Collier. So it's finding innovations in that way. It's finding innovations in your sales outreach, your follow-up. It's finding innovation in your discovery calls. It's those little tips of the trade that you don't know. I'll give you a great one that happened to me this morning. Actually, I was talking to a pretty well-known retailer. I can't say the name quite yet, and they want to do a partnership. They want to put us on their website, see how it goes, eventually bring us in store if it sells well. And she told me, she goes, Father's Day is the biggest indicator if a new product is going to sell well every year. And I was like, I never knew that. She's like, it's not something you would know unless you've been in the industry for a long time. And so she was, we're talking about release dates and scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And so it's little things like that you can never get until you're in it. And that's what makes entrepreneurship so great. You can teach it all you want, but until you've had an exit, everything is just theory. So
Got it.
that's my message to people who are looking for technology.
Yeah.
Innovate the low tech first. The high tech will be there. The infrastructure for the high tech is there. They're the AWSs of the world, the NVIDIAs of the world, and if you get there, all the better. But climbing and finding that way, I think you'll find a more niche value than you'd ever expect.
Totally. So have an open mind, find your multipliers, rely a lot on the network, and of course, brainstorm and, be thoughtful about why you're doing what you're doing and how can that be improved, and that's how you drive innovation. And even for larger companies and startups, I think this is something that is a mindset. Very often we have a saying that corporate digital has been a digital transformation company now, and this is our 14th year. But it's
Awesome.
really, we're not just about technology, or it's not about the emerging technology. It's not about having those hundreds of developers who would do coding and come up with their solution. A lot of times it's about the mindset. How can the culture of that organization change by changing that mindset towards technology, towards innovation, and then running those small experiments and then building on top of it. And I think automation, AI, I mean, this is on the rise, and it's going to change the world. Like in the next 5 years, the world that we're going to be living in is going to be so different, and it's very hard to predict the path it takes, but it's just so fascinating to be a part of it. But an interesting question that comes to mind, with the rise of AI and automation is, what's going to be the future of work? So I'd like you to answer that, in your opinion, as the last question before we start to wrap up here.
Absolutely. So I think AI is the last interface. So I that's the first thing I'll say. The future of work, it's going to be a lot of, ask AI, and it's going to certainly be more cerebral centric in the approach to planning. You can see a lot of the regulatory bodies getting involved with AI already.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be slower because even though it's been around since the 70s, it's newer to the public conscious, and so that always makes things a little bit more cautious. We can see that with full self-driving and the Teslas, for example.
Right. So,
So
is it going to take everyone's job away? I mean, that's the crux of the question. What's your answer to that?
no, I don't know if any human will intentionally design us out of the program,
Yeah. And
or out of the simulation, rather. I guess is
I
maybe.
think, yeah, I think I agree with you there, because there are still so much in which you require that human touch, that human intelligence. So,
Absolutely.
AI
You
can
can't
go so
you can't
far, but
program you can't program an emotion yet. That's what someone told
yes.
me. When you
and
figure out how
and
to program an emotion, let me know.
yeah, and there are some startups that are trying to create those emotionally intelligent bots that
So
would we did a healthcare podcast earlier where we talked about some of that, and of course we also focus on healthcare, and then of course this series is more about the digital industrial revolution, so about manufacturing, transportation, logistics, and then we're going to be coming up with another one which is related to fintech. And then, of course, we'll continue to add many more series and understand the impact of AI. But I agree with you that it's not like when computers came or when the World Wide Web came, it eliminated jobs. It empowered people to do higher quality jobs, to do things that were more meaningful to them. And so what if half the people only are required to do, I don't know, 3 days a week? I mean, I think that's better, so we can pursue our dreams and, have that time to really enjoy the experience. And so I feel like, of course, automation and AI would help us live such wonderful and so much better of a life that it's going to be good for everybody. And of course, the future of work is, much more sophisticated. So instead of doing those mundane, tedious jobs, you could do meaningful things, drive innovation. But this has been an amazing conversation, Andrew. Of course, it's clear that you're not just a leader in the digital revolution, you are a visionary. The way you think about the intersection of AI and IoT and connected devices, it's truly inspiring. As listeners, we've got a glimpse into the incredible potential of this technology to transform industries and improve our lives. Of course, the kind of work that you're doing at Kitchenery is, super meaningful, including the sustainability aspect. But I think for me, the most important takeaway was the human element. And It's not just about the tech, it's about harnessing the power for good and for a more sustainable and equitable future. So thanks again, Andrew, for joining us today. I, for one, am very excited to see what the future holds. So keep learning, keep exploring, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, when we have another amazing guest to speak about all these trends and more, goodbye.